Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today is episode number 65. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko. I am a former immigration lawyer turned entrepreneur. I am the founder of Laborless, which is a tech startup that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency for the immigration mobility industry, and which brings you this show. Today is what I love about this industry, and some people might even argue whether or not I bring on guests and talk to folks who are quote unquote outside the immigration tech space. But if you ask me, a company that is a technology company or a tech forward, a tech enabled service company that helps folks in any shape or form, if they're immigrating or moving around the world for work or pleasure, frankly, to me is immigration tech. And I know you can call companies in different ways. So I'm excited to kind of branch out into another sort of version of what immigration tech I think means to me, and bring on our guest today, Andrew Jernigan, who is the CEO of a company called Insured Nomads. And so Insured Nomads does a lot of different things at a very high level. It basically provides all sorts of like travel and health and other insurance for folks who are either traveling abroad temporarily or have moved abroad for digital nomads, for example, or folks who are moving abroad for work and might not be able to have kind of domestic health insurance and wherever they go. But it goes beyond health insurance. There's like emergency relief insurance. There's a membership where you can get a VPN if you have to log in a place that feels unsecure. Airport access. It's a company that provides a lot of different services, with, of course, the linchpin being insurance. So I'm excited to get into this discussion and talk about how technology can enable folks who are traveling around the world, again, for work and for pleasure, to leverage insurance and feel safer when they're traveling. And all right, I'm not going to get any further into this. Let's bring in Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. That was a very long introduction. I feel like I just did the whole show there. So thank you for being here, and I'm
No, this is
excited.
great. Loving it. Years ago, I got my global mobility specialist designation. So, this is a field that I'm passionate about, having lived around the world, 5 different continents, living and working. So, it's a privilege to be on the show with you today, Roman. And greetings to everyone who's watching from around the world.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Before we jump in, for folks who are here, live watching, tuning in, wherever you are, Facebook, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, let us know who you are, where you're at, where you work. If you want to shout out, your own business or your company, and of course, ask us questions along the way as we go, or leave comments or whatnot. Again, part of the reason I love doing this show live is because we do get to actually interact with the folks who are here. Otherwise, I would just record all these things in one day on the weekend and put them out as just a podcast. But I do love the live aspect of it. So again, share your comments. And of course, if you like the conversation, like it, or love it, or clap for it, or whatever you want to do, wherever you are. So Andrew, we were just chatting because before we went live, and I was asking you about your last name. You mentioned Jernigan. It comes from the UK, but your family came here to the US in the 1700s. Is that right?
That is, I've actually seen reference in Zane Grey historical Western books,
Wow.
of the Jernigans that landed in North Carolina and hit the Southeast, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and but we do have a manor where a lot of gravestones and markers are of where the Jernigans lived. None are left in England, though.
Wow. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me, even when I meet people whose families came in the early 1900s. I mean, I immigrated here. I was really young. I was 2.5, but I moved to the US when I was 2, from the former Soviet Union. And it blows my mind to know that, folks have been on US soil for hundreds of years. So I know that I know you went to college in the Southeast as well, right? Is that where you sort of grew up? Like where, your family landed there and you've sort of been in the region since then, basically?
Well, yeah, I was born in Boston
Okay.
and grew up in the Southeast in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. And from 20 onward, I got a taste of international living. We had spent my whole childhood traveling all around the US. And so that was being exposed to different regions of the country was normal. But in undergrad, I did get the chance to go to Europe. And it was there where my life was ruined for the ordinary. I lived in a co-living space in 1995 and 96 in Amsterdam that had over 24 countries in it.
Wow.
And I just said, there's not a country I don't want to visit. I want to marry someone from another culture, and I want to experience every country I can during my lifetime.
Wow. Did you, what were you thinking about doing kind of when you were traveling around the world? Were you just exposing yourself to it, or were you thinking international business, or?
I was journaling at the time thinking, okay, when I get finished with this season, finish undergrad, what's it going to be? Am I going to get my MBA or am I going to go into humanitarian work? And it was a struggle between the two. And eventually I finished undergrad, went straight into healthcare administration. And there I met my wife, who's a doctor.
Nice.
She was from Brazil, wanted to find an African country that needed her skills. And that's what led us to Ghana, actually. We ended up moving and spending close to 4 years with an organization that led us into remote work in Ghana, West Africa, about 7 hours from the capital. And that was a wild season of remote wilderness medicine.
Wow. So your wife was helping administer medicine, and sort of what were you doing? Were you supporting the organization, helping them coordinate things?
Yeah, I was not in Kansas anymore. I had gone from managing a clinic in Wichita, Kansas, to clinic administrator at this place in Ghana. So it was everything from building an operating theater, operating ward, and outpatient and nurse housing, everything from construction projects to making sure we had the medicine staffed and hired, staff hired, etc. as administrator of the facility, and raising the funds to do the work there.
Was it challenging for you to kind of get, visa, or what was that situation? Was it easier because you were going to volunteer?
No, it wasn't. We had a host organization, a national organization that said, we'll get your visas. And they vanished with our passports.
Wow.
And months later, we would get our passports. And sometimes they would have a visa in them. Other times they wouldn't. And many times we were illegal in the country just because our host organization didn't get everything done. And here we were thinking, okay, before we fly, you need to get our visa so we can go back and speak and raise funds for the next season of growth at the organization, building this hospital up. So it was a challenge in the nonprofit world as well, because, just especially when things weren't computerized, and often still aren't in some developing countries.
Yeah, wow, that's kind of crazy. You would think that. I guess thankfully you didn't get kicked out. I guess you flew under the radar for those times that you were, quote unquote, unlawfully present there.
Right.
So you would go back once in a while to the U.S. and, like you said, speak or raise funds or whatnot, and then bring, have that funding be transferred over to the organization, then go back to Ghana and continue the work.
Right. Go out for vacations, conferences, raise funds, etc. And just, 2 children born while we were with that. And it's one in Ghana, one in the US. Our kids are have different passports. My youngest was born there. So it's a thing of blonde hair, blue eyed, says he's African.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah. And then, so after your time at Ghana, I think you then lived in Brazil, right, and worked in Brazil for some time.
Yes, we've working across 5 continents, traveling over the last 20 years. This has been a journey of finding ways to keep whatever our passions are going strong. And with my wife, with global health and travel medicine as her specialty over the years, myself in risk management. After healthcare administration, I went into risk management and crisis response technology. During undergrad, I had spent time on the tech side in banking. So the fintech aspects of my passion as a technical founder. So it has really been a journey to support each other within our gift sets.
Mm-hmm.
As sometimes one move would be because of her and I would be the accompanying partner. And at other times it's her moving because I have an opportunity to pursue.
So
And at this moment, it's actually both of us on the same team, as she's one of the co-founders on the founding team at Insured Nomads.
wow, no kid, that's amazing. So after all this time, you can
Yes.
finally actually bring your knowledge and your skills together.
Correct.
So what were some, I want to kind of, I'm curious to know about your experience. You obviously lived in Ghana, and then you spent time working in Brazil, it sounds like. For some of those, and then it also sounds like some of the work that you did was your job that, your wife was, and I guess your family or your children were accompanying. What was that opportunity that came up? Because I know you said you worked in travel, risk management, crisis response. So what were some of those things that you did?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I've, from after Ghana, it was a season of working for another humanitarian organization that worked in 38 countries. I saw the crisis occur in different fields, saw people experience hardship. And that was when I said, look, I'm going to get credentialed, get licensed, get contracted with insurance companies around the world, whether they're based in Asia, based in South Africa, and the different carriers all around the world, to find the solutions. And it's an industry that has been quite behind the times. It's a PDF attached to an email, and it's fine print, and it's tedious to get claims paid. And it's one that now is catching up with technology bit by bit. And along that journey, I got recruited to work with one of the largest crisis response companies with their technologies, building that embedded within insurance companies. And again, insurance companies weren't really keen on it. There were a couple of large players that embedded it. And I saw the need for more in insurance than medical, because so many people don't get ill or injured and they feel like they're wasting money, and then they go years without it. And they should have had it, because then there's a chronic illness diagnosed or a catastrophe that happens, and that's when that risk needs to be transferred over. So it's living around the world, single, married, and then with kids. To your point there, it's been an adventure, supporting each other in those calls, in those decisions, and figuring out how to educate the kids in each environment. We've done local school. We've had a teacher travel with us. We've done international school. We've done, 3 forms of international: Italian, Canadian, American. It's been quite a mess, really, looking back. And luckily, we can support the kids with counseling at this age to say, okay, yeah, there were some wins, there were some failures, and you learn through mistakes.
That's for sure. And as an immigration professional, I'm also curious, who was helping you handle all the kind of, visa applications and things? Was it based on the company that was moving you or your wife, or was it on you, or was there a third party provider?
In most cases, it was on us.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And those times when it was outsourced, it needed so much handholding through their process just to make sure they were doing what they needed to do and correcting what they did that failed. It's an industry that needs reform, but a lot of that depends on the governments,
Right.
not just on the providers. So I think that as things shift, as we've had the pandemic put the spotlight on nations saying, okay, we want immigrants, we need people coming in, and we want to attract people to move to the countries, I think that's going to shift the immigration policies in many more countries.
It looks like it's already happening. I mean, if you look at north of the border here in the US, I mean, Canada, since 2017, since when the prior administration clamped down on some aspects of immigration, Canada very quickly responded and sort of opened its borders in some ways. And you see that in a bunch of other countries. But yeah, to your point, you know, it is tough. Different countries have different policies. I remember I was talking to a West African immigration lawyer at a conference, and this person was saying that when they go into they would like go to the immigration office, and there would just be a notice taped to the door that said some policy change, and like you had to find out by going. You know, it wasn't anything major, but it implicated, you know, a client or a case or what have you, where the office was just closed, you know, and because I remember talking to this person saying, look, how can technology help you? I forget which country she worked on a number of countries in like Southwest Africa. And she was like, honestly, I don't know, because there's not enough consistency in the way immigration laws are administered. And so to hear that you had to deal with that on your own, right? Like not maybe knowing what's on the ground. It's hard to rely on websites. That's tough.
It is. And I look back, I'm 48 years old. I look back at this and think, I remember when entering a country, you had to have this piece of paper that had your flight details that was, you know, so that you could present that at immigration at different points. And just keeping track of a piece of paper that occasionally you would lose. It would be in your briefcase, your laptop bag for a while, and then all of a sudden it's not. It's like, oh no, am I going to be penalized? Am I going to be kicked out of the country because I don't have that piece of paper I left the airplane with? It's over and over. It happened. It's like, where's that piece of paper?
Now at least we have our phones. Things are in the cloud, right?
Right. Yes.
That's crazy. So you mentioned earlier that you did get your global mobility like certification. How did that come about? Like, how did you, you know, at what point in your career did you sort of have this need, I suppose, or desire to lean into the global mobility side for a bit?
That was out of pain. I'm a justice fighter. That's the reason why I'm in risk management. Wow. Insurance is to save people. I feel like a Robin Hood. It's like, give me a shield, give me a sword. I'm going to go fight for justice. And having gone through the pains of it, I said, okay, fine. I'm going to pay the $3,500, get the global mobility specialist designation. It's like, okay, wow, that was easy. I was thinking I was going to learn a whole lot more through that. It was a few modules, and there we go. I had some letters behind my name, but it was, you know, I was an accompanying partner at that, you know, a trailing spouse, to use the pejorative negative term, but I was the trailing spouse thinking, okay, what am I going to do with myself? So I got contracted with the destination service providers, and so I could translate and look at rental agreements in Portuguese and help people and take them to the houses, the international schools, and guide them through that process during a season of being a trailing spouse with looking for an extra stream of income. Mm-hmm. So that's how that came about. That was rather short-lived because it was not as, it was you know, in my role, I wanted to do more than be the subject matter expert tour guide that I felt like I was being. It didn't fit my personality for what I was qualified to do, not having the tenure to do more than that. So I focused more on risk management.
Got it. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. It's always interesting to use the term, you know, I suppose, trailing spouse or accompanying partner. It is tough. I mean, you make a sacrifice. You have a career, you have credentials, you have a network wherever you're coming from. You have your own set of language skills. You're lucky if you're in a place where you can really find an opportunity. But you know, you hear about a lot of folks that just it's hard. So it's interesting that you had both experiences as the primary, you know, relocated person, and then also the person who's accompanying, you know, your spouse.
Yeah, and that happens so often when you end up with a cross-cultural marriage. to where you end up going back and forth, or at least within those communities. You may spend the day within that culture on occasion, and it's realizing, okay, you're giving 100%, both of you giving 100%. That means cheering on the career of your partner, your wife, your husband, no matter what culture it's in. And, you know, in my case, my Brazilian wife is in the US a lot of the time these days, but her English comes across as American in many contexts almost 21 years later.
Mm-hmm. And how's your Portuguese, by the way?
It's a bit rusty right now. I'll be speaking in Portuguese at Rio Innovation Week in January, and I'm a bit nervous about it. Oh. But yeah, it's decent.
That's good. I'm curious, did you learn it because of your wife, or did you were you already studying it, or?
I would never have learned Portuguese if it weren't for my wife. I didn't need to learn it to communicate with her, since was fluent in English when we met.
Right.
But it does help to learn the first language of your spouse. And of course, having lived there many times now, for 2 years once, and a year and a half another time, 3 years another time, different cities in Brazil, different seasons, it helps to, of course, to master the language.
Yeah, that's great. That's such and you know, if you're living there and you feel compelled because you want to speak, you know, you want to go to the store without having to call someone to translate for you, you sort of have to learn the language.
You do, and that was the same with living in Ghana, and so I love it when I run into somebody from Ghana that I can speak Twi with, and in the, you know, in the airport. And I saw someone at the InsureTech Connect conference in Las Vegas this last week, and I saw him. I was like, okay, where's your family from? He said Ghana, and I switched to speaking Twi with him, and you know, it was just so much fun.
That's so cool. Do languages come pretty naturally to you? I'm curious.
You know, I wouldn't have said that previously, having grown up in the Southeast in the US with very limited multicultural exposure. Mm-hmm. But I think that a lot of times it's a choice of engaging and dedicating the necessary time. And it means so much to people if you can get the basics down to communicate. And I just strongly encourage it. I'm more and more motivated to add more languages.
That's great. You know, I love that you say that, because I feel like a lot of times when people learn another language, they're actually nervous to use it because it's not perfect. But I think the folks who you're talking to are actually would be really flattered that it's clearly not your first language, and you're really trying to to communicate with them, even if you're going to say something pretty basic and standard. I think it's nice. Like, I speak Russian. When a random person, or not a random person, or when somebody who has no connection to the Russian language, you know, busts out a couple of phrases, I love it. I think it's great. It's funny to me.
Right? Yeah. And my American English isn't perfect, so why should I be ashamed of my other languages not being perfect?
It's a good point. I'll tell you what, my family, you know, we came here. I was obviously young when I came here, but you know, my parents were older, and so they had studied English back in the Soviet Union, and in many ways, their grammar was sometimes better than folks who I know who grew up here, just because they really had to get drilled on it. Versus here, you pick it up on TV, you know, this and that. It's like more slang. So interestingly enough, sometimes when you learn a language as an outsider, if you will, you might actually know it a little bit better, or perhaps more technically, than a native speaker. At least in my experience, I found that, which is always funny to me. I don't know.
Yes.
So, it's just an aside, because I don't know. I love the idea of like multicultural families and the concept of moving around the world, and of course how we deal with it. So after you did the stint at the DSP and you spent some time, you were sort of bouncing back and forth in terms of which spouse was the main kind of spouse moving the rest of the family. But before you started Insured Nomads, you also you worked in like an insurance capacity, right? Or for an insurance company.
Yeah, brokering 25 of the leading international carriers around the world, from Sigma Global to Bupa, Allianz, etc. The leading carriers. And that's how I realized, okay, change needs to occur. from the claims process to the features in the plans, how they're built, from the broker side, what they get to see, how they interact, the technology that's built in. So in 2019, we birthed Insured Nomads to create the needed solution that is really an insurtech, but it's building in travel tech and fintech components so that claims processes are not strictly reimbursement based. So we're tied into the MasterCard network. So the policy card is actually connected to a powerhouse for being able to pay the claim right when you're leaving the hospital instead of fighting to get that reimbursed later. Or in-app reimbursement right there. Snap the pictures, put in your bank account info, gets reviewed, gets deposited, whatever currency around the world. To the travel tech components of seeing people within your community, the expats in the community, on your app, and getting a doctor, a nurse to your Airbnb, to your hotel, instead of having to go to this foreign hospital and sitting for 6 hours saying, yes, we have a specialist coming, but realizing it's coming in a couple of days. And there you are sitting for a few hours waiting before you're told, oh, yeah, we meant he's coming in a few days. Mm-hmm. Having it to where it's sent to your hotel and the components to where you're actually able to get to the airport lounge when you're traveling. You have cybersecurity built into the plan. You know, you insure your car, and that includes roadside assistance. You bought car insurance so that if you're in a collision, your car is repaired. But they include those nice things like roadside assistance, just as a feature. In our world, it is similar. You buy health insurance, you buy international travel medical insurance, and you're getting unlimited mental health sessions. You're getting unlimited telemedicine, the cybersecurity benefits, and I could go on. But it's just that there's so much more value that is needed in this set and the technologies that's up to date for today. Because, you know, sadly, within our industry, it's still a fax it in mentality. I was told, yes, fax it. Find a fax machine somewhere on a claim with someone not too long ago. And that's just not the, you know, where can I find a museum with a fax machine? So it is, we've got to think differently, act differently, and build differently. And that's what we've done. And with the next level, the travel risk management memberships, the individual and corporate policies for protecting devices, that's the earbuds, phones, computers, an espresso machine on the counter in your kitchen, all that can be included. And it's as little as 20 euros a month to include, you know, 20 devices on a plan like that for a company or an individual. That is something that the globally mobile need, because, and they're fighting many times just to get coverage on the basic things that they depend on to live when they're lost, stolen, or broken. So we're building the advanced tech and enabled plans for today's citizen, for the, you know, the globally mobile.
I'm curious. I want to step back for just a moment because I'm genuinely curious. I mean, you were brokering different insurance providers and services during the time that you were at this company. Obviously, before you started Insured Tech, and I mean, you said that you realized that the industry was behind, and again, I clearly was missing some of the things you were just noting. But I'm curious, what was your experience there? I mean, at what point did you say this is, because it takes a certain level of conviction and maybe guts and maybe, just being fed up with the status quo to say, I'm leaving a career, a job that pays me salary consistently. I have insurance,
yes,
et cetera, to start a company. So I'm curious, obviously there was either one moment or maybe a lot of moments that accumulated into this. But did you have memories of something that happened where you were like, this is ridiculous. This needs to be innovated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a massive list of instances, and the duty of care component that we've built in, which is what I described, the panic button, the employee check-in, the geo-IP tracking, those type components that are essential are available to all of our members. And I remember one time talking to the leading company in the world for duty of care memberships, trying to get their services when we lived in Ghana, and they laughed at us and said, you can't afford us. That's because they worked for the oil and gas, the mining, the multinational companies, and they knew we worked for a humanitarian organization. That's just not fair. So that's one example. Another is, of course, we paid in for a family living internationally, US coverage included, with one of the major legacy carriers. We paid the good, $1,000 a month for 5 years. That's $60,000. We had one claim, birth of a child. It was $5,000 and our out of pocket was $3,000. So we paid more than they did on the one claim we had, and we paid $60,000. How many people feel like they're paying so much and not getting anything for it? We didn't have telemedicine. We didn't have mental health, unlimited mental health services like I described earlier. So much that we've built in, and it's in a area that really hasn't changed in the last 15 years. It's the same schedule of benefits on a PDF, maybe a plastic card still mailed to you. It's not storable in your iPhone, Apple Wallet, Google Play Store wallet, things like that that are easy to do, easy to implement, but it's still not being done, except with us. So it's one of those things. The passion is there, and yes, our president joined as one of our founders. He had spent 20 years with Cigna Global and came to us after a few years at United Healthcare Global. Brought on the guy who built the global provider network for Cigna, AIG, MetLife, Expat, and United. Joined us, and among others that we have a stellar team that have built Insured Nomads over the last 2+ years, and with underwriters that take on the risk, that have been very accommodating with all the technology that we've said is essential as we build this out.
I'm curious, and forgive my ignorance for the industry. I mean, because of course I understand it, but I don't know the intricacies. You mentioned the situation where you wanted a particular service when you're in Ghana, and the service provider was like, "No, I'm sorry, we don't work with humanitarian orgs. If we did a one-off for you, it would be so expensive that it wouldn't even matter." How do you then? But the idea with building something like Insured Nomads, and I know you described some of the services. I want to, after in a couple of minutes, I want to ask you to I want to know, well, what is it for folks who don't understand what is it? But when you're building out, a service that previously was only available to a certain few big clients and whatnot, and you're trying to bring those benefits to the masses, right? How do you do that? I mean, do you have to build the partnerships? Do you have to promise them certain scale that they're currently not seeing? How do you do that?
We've had a lot of favor, really, in this. For the best-in-class providers around the world to say, look, yes, we believe in what you're doing. The world is changing. It's not just multinational corporations anymore that need what's being built. It is the location independence, freelance worker, family, world schooler, the person that buys a company in Cape Town and they're the only expat, or they only are sending one person over, and a group plan with a huge company isn't viable. I mean, isn't even an option. So an individual doesn't get the benefit. These major benefits are usually only available when the group has 50 employees or more. So the rest are just on, the plans built for one person that are basic medical only, like I described we had. Mm-hmm. So it is to build the tech stack needed. With the native apps, the web portals, the different things required for expat coverage, short-term international, the risk management membership, and the new products from life and disability to the belongings coverage I mentioned earlier. It takes a lot of cooperation. Progress doesn't occur without cooperation. And the leading brokers of the world from Gallagher to One Digital, the Median in Portugal, Hub International, they're just thrilled, excited about what we've done. Because we're in an industry that has been cookie cutter, change the logos on the brochures. And the medical is pretty much the same with everyone. So it is exhilarating, really, to breathe a new wind across a really boring product that's essential for everybody into something that folks are like, oh, wow, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Our team needs this. I'm going to tell the broker about this.
I love it. I want to bring in just one quick note here from Marianne. We were talking about languages. She says, "Da spasibo, Roman Zelchenko," and that's all I've got besides net and do svidania. Marianne, I thought you were going to say something in Russian and Portuguese and build a bridge here, but no, I love it. Thanks for I appreciate like those kind of just a few words makes me happy. And thank you for your comment. And of course, for anyone else watching, leave us a comment. Let us know where you are, who you are. And where you work, ask questions along the way as well. So Andrew, I think this is a good time for me to ask you. I mean, you've talked about a lot of the benefits, and I know I kind of introduced Insured Nomads in the beginning there, but how do you define the company, and who are you? Who do you serve today? Who do you go for as your prospective sort of client or user?
We're primarily working with multinational companies, organizations around the world, but we do offer these plans to individuals. Mm-hmm. We work through brokers and allied partnerships. We have APIs ready to deploy within booking processes, apps, and that's, for lack of a better term, affiliate marketing. But yet we can deploy that within an API. So it's embedded within someone's environment, such as Mobility Empowered in their marketplace and others. It's very simple for us to work with tech teams and integrate this so that there's value add and ancillary revenue for people. So we are providing a very rounded benefit suite in travel risk management, insurance, and the conveniences that people often need but don't make the expense for. Corporations, especially small groups, would like to provide but don't know how or don't allocate the funds for it. They're automatically included with what we're doing.
And so the idea would be, and this would probably be ideal for startups, right, who are either just opening up some offices abroad and are sending folks, or maybe people who are mm-hmm. taking advantage of digital nomad visas, and their employees are like, look, I'm working from home here. Mm-hmm. Why can't I work remotely in Buenos Aires? Like, what do you care? And then they say, sure, but they of course need to protect their employees. And so things like that, situations like that.
Right. And it's coming to us through allied partners that aren't credentialed. They don't answer questions. They don't sell insurance, but they have a link saying, here, check these folks out. And they end up with another stream of revenue just through referral marketing. And so it's for those one-offs where companies, don't have an army of people around the world. They may just have those 2 employees that are, one's being sent to Latvia and the other one's being sent to Colombia. So they don't have a group global benefits plan necessarily. And the expert in global mobility, the expert in immigration law that's helping them through this process may say, I know some folks that can help. As well as those who are just so tired of the plans they've been with for years, looking, and just that's how we're getting the word out, because it's a industry that needs change, and I hope that our impact has a ricochet effect across many. And credit goes out. We've learned through these experts, these major companies. So credit goes out to what they've built, the foundation they've laid.
For your API, because I think in the more traditional, if I will, immigration space, where immigration technology space, where the tech companies tend to be case management, platforms or others that specifically deal with immigration lawyers and the visa process, not this broader kind of um, idea of mobility. APIs are a brand new thing, right? Like companies are still working in silos. Platforms don't talk to one another. There's double data entry, et cetera.
Yeah.
For you, you're clearly you're building that into your model. What are the types of companies that you can integrate with? Like who can use your API?
It is actually where it's easy to implement, and it is through a referral-based affiliate marketing. It's something that almost anyone can implement.
Hmm.
But if there's not a tech team, if you're looking at thinking, okay, I've got a blog and I have an article, or I can add something to my drop down on my header menus, we can just do a simple link that has cookies and tracking that is, GDPR compliant, and that's the easy thing. That way, those who are listening live or in hindsight thinking, what are they talking about with an API? I am tech and it's my WordPress site. No, we can simplify it, make it even easier, just a link. Because we're providing, like I made that reference earlier of the Robinhood. It is. I think all of us in this type work in immigration law and global mobility, we're doing it because we have the desire to make people's lives easier and to help people. So here we are in our niche doing the same.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that because then you could go after everyone from a digital nomad travel blogger or a travel app to the technology stack within a DSP or an RMC, and potentially even maybe to an immigration lawyer. They get their visa, they get the visa for their client. Their client's like, great. Do you have any other support referrals? As I go through this journey of now utilizing the visa and moving from one place to another, and for them to say, look, well, here are a couple of different services you can look at, and I suppose insurance is one of them. I find it interesting, and this is why I said in the beginning of this episode, it's like for me, it's branching out from my point of view, the core of immigration. None of mobility is impossible without immigration. If you're not allowed to get a visa, or if you can't legally enter another country, the insurance, the booking, the lounge, like that stuff doesn't exist because you can't physically move. So for me, immigration was the starting point. But as a lawyer, I always thought it was the end point because that was my job. I get you the visa and I move on. I never thought about sort of the actual relocation process, moving your stuff and bringing your family, finding a home, finding a school, finding your spouse, work potentially or what have you. So I think a lot of this to me is really fascinating because clearly the services you provide are support the things that can happen, downstream from the immigration process. And so I guess, yeah, it sounds like the interaction could be with lawyers. It could be with bloggers. It could be with other tech companies that just deal with this clientele.
It is. And, it's in our nature. I think all of us who are here watching on GMI, it's in our nature to help people through this global journey, whether it's in getting their visa, getting their passport, getting them naturalized in whatever country they're going to, or their work permit, to all the different layers of this. So it's an honor to really share with you what we're up to. And we're here because of you, because people can't go international a lot of times without what you guys are doing.
That's right. So what do you see in the future for Insured Nomads? I mean, you guys have your kind of, I'm probably not going to say this the right way, but almost the flagship would be the insurance, I guess, right? Because that's sort of the bread and butter. But then you have a membership with all different additional perks. What do you see? Like, what's your vision for the organization? What more can you do? And sort of, if you can share, what are you working on now that you're looking forward to?
There's a lot. It's fun, with multinational pooling, which is where we can serve both the expats and the local national on the plans. is one, but one of the latest that we're going to be revealing soon, I'll give a sneak peek into, is that premiums can be paid with crypto. And we're the first in this space to accept payments for your insurance with cryptocurrencies, with Bitcoin and other currencies within that realm. There need to be reforms in payments, with whether it's paying the hospitals, paying the claims, or even paying premiums. It's been a pain. And as in many countries, it's hard to wire money in and out. And so when someone needs to pay their premium, if a company needs to, that we've got to make it easier. And so the travel tech component is going to continuously evolve for us, because we're serving those that are globally mobile. So we need to keep evolving with what is included in the technology aspects of that. Whether it's the latest variants of a virus, as we have 50 different variations ahead of us. And as countries change, some view it in one perspective and others view it from another. We've got to keep people up to date with those. And because otherwise they're going to plan their relocation and realize they can't get in. And so if we can provide those things within our environment, we're providing the value for prevention. So that prevention, they can have the mental health, they can have the telemedicine without having to go to the hospital and get a hospital related infection that unrelated to why they went there in the first place.
That's right. And for folks who are working overseas on assignment, that can help them feel confident that they made the right choice by leaving their comfortable home in Boston and taking this position in Cape Town and not wanting to move home and feel homesick and whatnot.
Yes. But with that, having access to the very best hospitals in the US when they come home to the US, or when they
right.
That's key. And that's through our preferred provider network relationships. And having those type partnerships around the world is the key to our success. Mm-hmm. Because it's, again, cooperation between Laborless and us, between the other people on these calls with each other, so that when you don't know the answer, that's when we can progress, is through cooperation, collaboration.
What do you see for the future of the industry? I mean, one thing that you noted, of course, is the crypto aspect, which is rearing its head ever so gently in the mobility space, because one of the beautiful things about something like cryptocurrency is that it's borderless. Borders are of no consequence. And so for remittances, people use crypto and things like that. But where do you see the industry going? Do you see it kind of like leapfrogging from faxing to, accepting crypto? Are there steps in between that you see? I'm just curious, based on kind of where you sit in the industry, which is kind of in the middle of a lot of different players, what your thoughts are on, where the, I guess, mobility industry is going, or the movement of people is heading.
I believe that we will have immigration reform in more and more countries, that a result of the remote work visa in Cabo Verde, just for an example. They're not calling it a digital nomad visa. It's a remote work visa. Those folks will be there for 6 months and apply to stay. And they'll move to a different type of visa. And they'll end up getting married or opening a business and staying there. And then having other people come and work there with them. Just as examples, we're going to have change happening within nations to say, come, and that means new types of visas. It's not going to be the expat, traditional, prove all these documents of your work and the company that's already registered there. Mm-hmm. It's going to be more income based and proving that income, rather than all the other documents that we've had to work through in the past. I believe that countries will be targeting people to come to their countries and knocking down those walls. So you'll see advertising campaigns, not just for tourism, but for immigration. That's been something that has never happened before, to my knowledge, that you would have ads in magazines saying, move here,
Mm-hmm.
except in Costa Rica or something like that. But, that's been rather limited, and that's going to spread more and more widely across the world, I believe.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I definitely agree with you. I mean, I'm seeing it already for Canada, for example. Frankly, I've even seen it within the US now that a lot of companies allow their employees to work more remotely. There are cities and more broadly states saying, move here, tax benefits, cost of living is cheaper. You get space, whatever it might be. Specifically, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
I keep seeing ads for Ohio, which, is just interesting to me.
Right.
Um,
I saw West Virginia saying, come
right.
live here.
Right.
So just
Right.
as states, which are really countries within the United States, are doing it, we'll see other countries within different regions of the world targeting and changing immigration laws and keeping up with that and applying it within the corporate context. Because we may be able to help people work in a country by showing their salary, and they can get a visa to go in quicker than getting their visa the other way and converting it. And of course, that's going to be country by country. But we've got to think outside the box, as countries are going to be shifting quickly.
If I had to ask you as a final question here, I usually like to end on something kind of a little bit more, fun or lighthearted, if you will. You've been around the world you've worked and lived in 5 continents. If I had to, force you to tell me the one story that you'll never forget, traveling around and feeling like, oh my God, this is it. This is like a dangerous or bad or scary situation. Do any of those stories come to mind?
Oh my. I had 3 just flash across my mind. One of them, I actually left the country that we were living in at the time, and left my wife and kids in the country, and got back. And actually, while I was gone, my wife did something that offended the locals. And they said that they would need to sacrifice a cow and potentially do a lot of other stuff. And I was gone for it. I was back in 10 days. But it was one of those things of, I can't believe this is happening. And it's like, why did we all travel on that quick trip versus me leaving them behind? So that was one of the ones. It's like, I can't believe this is happening. Those cultural scenarios that you go through. Another one, it was just, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, there's some fun stories, but others that are just victories. And I think, man, if I could go do that again, I sure would. Yeah.
That is crazy. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine the sort of the almost retroactive fear of like, this could have been way worse.
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, you never know. So that's a good lesson. If you're somewhere where you don't quite know the cultural nuances, and there's a possibility that there may be sacrifices or other sort of things like that, just stay clear of doing things that may be offensive to others. Probably solid advice for life in general, but especially if you're traveling and living in a country that you're not very familiar with. Well, I'm happy everything turned out okay and you got back home to, see your family.
Yes, it was meeting with council people and things like that when I got back to smooth, basically political relations. It was, but things did move well. And, here we are, all of us, I think, with these stories we could share. And thank you for the opportunity to share some of that here. I really appreciate that, Roman. You have fabulous guests on your show, and I encourage everybody to like and share and invite your friends when you see an episode coming up, because it's worth tuning in to GMI Rocket.
I appreciate it. Well, and thank you, Andrew. I appreciate you being here and sharing your story. I'm excited for what you guys are building with Insured Nomads, and I'm honestly next time I travel, I'm going to hit you up because I've never thought about it. I've never really gotten travel insurance, to be quite honest with you. So I really should be paying more attention to that. But in the meantime,
Yep. So
thank you again, Andrew. And thanks for sharing your story. And for folks to check you out, insurednomads.com is the website. I'll have, some more information in the show notes, but just for folks, who are watching or listening to go check out the site. So thank you again.
absolutely, my pleasure.
All right. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm wrapping it up for the year. We have 2 more Fridays this year, but of course it's Christmas and New Year's. So no shows for the next 2 weeks. We'll be back January, the first Friday in January. We have great guests coming up next year. In the meantime, thank you everyone for your comments, for your, for always following and liking the show and joining. Elena, I see you left a comment here. So thank you again for tuning in. And Marianne, as always, thank you for your support. I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the year. Happy holidays, a safe new year, and see you all in 2022. So thanks again, y'all. Peace out.